It was my fate to catch my wife with another man in our home. I'd just sealed a $4 million deal, the kind that flips your whole life upside down in the best way possible. My name's Jack, and I'm no big shot CEO, just a guy from Ohio who's been grinding in sales for 15 years. This was my moment, the biggest one of my career, and let me tell you, it felt like hitting a grand slam in the bottom of the ninth. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might bust right through my chest. Pride, excitement, all of it swirled together like a cold beer on a hot July day. I was in Chicago, supposed to stick around for another 2 days of meetings, but I couldn't wait. I had to get home to Lauren, my wife of 12 years, and share this with her. So, I booked the earliest flight I could find and pictured the whole thing, her running to the door, throwing her arms around me, maybe even crying a little when I dropped the news. We'd scraped by for so long, and this was our ticket to finally breathe easy. The deal went down in a sleek conference room on the 42nd floor of some glass tower downtown. I was pitching to a group of suits from a logistics company, guys with cufflinks that probably cost more than my car. My palms were sweaty, but I kept my cool, laying out how our software could save them millions in shipping costs. I'd rehearsed this pitch 100 times in hotel mirrors, tweaking every word, every slide. When I finished, the room went quiet, and for a second, I thought I'd bombed. Then the CEO, a guy named Whitaker with a handshake like a vice grip, leaned back and said, "Jack, you've got yourself a deal. For $1 million. $4 million. I nodded like it was no big deal, but inside, I was screaming. We shook hands, signed the preliminary papers, and I walked out of there feeling 10 feet tall. I didn't even go back to my hotel right away. I wandered Michigan Avenue, grinning like an idiot, the city buzzing around me. The wind off Lake Michigan was sharp, but I barely felt it. I passed a jewelry store and stopped, staring at a sapphire necklace in the window. Lauren loves blue. It matches her eyes. I imagined draping it around her neck, her smile lighting up the room. We'd had lean years, plenty of them. Early in our marriage, we lived in a one-bedroom apartment with a leaky faucet and a couch we got off Craigslist. I'd work late, she'd pick up extra shifts at the hospital, and we'd still argue over whether we could afford takeout. This deal? It was our way out. No more pinching pennies, no more stress over the mortgage. Maybe we'd finally take that trip to Italy she always talked about, sip wine in some vineyard, just the two of us. I pulled out my phone and booked a 6 a.m. flight home to Columbus. No layovers, no nonsense, just me getting back to my wife as fast as I could. I didn't call or text her. I wanted it to be a surprise, the kind that makes her laugh and roll her eyes before pulling me into a hug. I could already see her in her favorite sweatshirt, her blonde hair tied up in that messy bun, standing in our kitchen with a cup of coffee. I'd walk in, drop my suitcase, and say, "Babe, we did it." She'd probably scream, maybe spill her coffee, and we'd laugh about it for days. That's how we were partners, through the rough patches and now, finally, the good ones. Back at the hotel, I packed my bag in a hurry, tossing in my wrinkled dress shirts and that tie Lauren picked out for me years ago. It's navy, with little red stripes, and she always said it made me look sharp. I kept replaying the moment in my head, Whitaker's handshake, the signatures, the number with all those zeros. I barely slept, too wired, too ready to get home. By 4 a.m., I was at O'Hare, sipping bad airport coffee, my leg bouncing like a kid waiting for Christmas. The flight was quick, just over an hour, and when we touched down in Columbus, I felt like I was floating. I grabbed my bag, hailed a cab, and leaned back, staring out at the familiar streets. This was it. Our life was about to change, and I couldn't wait to tell Lauren we'd made it. I grabbed my suitcase off the baggage claim at Port Columbus International, the wheels clacking against the polished floor. My navy tie with the red stripes, the one Lauren always said made me look sharp, was stuffed in my bag, a little wrinkled but still good. I didn't bother changing out of my travel clothes, a rumpled button-up, khakis, and loafers that had seen better days. I was too eager to get home. I hailed a cab, tossed my bag in the back, and gave the driver our address in Westerville, a quiet suburb with tree-lined streets and houses that all look a little alike. "Step on it," I said, half joking, and the guy nodded, pulling into traffic. The ride was about 20 minutes, and I spent it staring out the window, my leg bouncing like it did when I was a kid waiting for my turn at bat. The city lights faded into strip malls, then into neighborhoods with kids' bikes left on lawns and mailboxes stuffed with flyers. I thought about how Lauren and I had bought our place 10 years ago, a 2-story with a small porch and a backyard just big enough for a grill. We'd painted the living room ourselves, arguing over whether morning mist was too gray. She won, of course. Always did. I imagined walking in, dropping my suitcase by the coat rack, and shouting, "Honey, I'm home," like some cheesy sitcom dad. She'd probably be in the kitchen, sipping coffee, or maybe curled up on the couch with one of her mystery novels. The cab pulled up to our house, and I handed the driver a 20, telling him to keep the change. I grabbed my bag, the handle slick from my sweaty palm, and stood on the sidewalk for a second, taking it in. Our house looked the same as always. Red brick, white shutters, the rose bushes Lauren planted by the mailbox. The porch light was off, though, which was odd. She usually left it on when I was out of town. I shrugged it off. Maybe she forgot, and headed up the walk, my shoes crunching on the gravel. My heart was racing, not just from the deal but from the thought of seeing her. I fumbled with my keys, unlocked the front door, and stepped inside. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No hum of the dishwasher, no murmur of the TV playing one of her cooking shows, no clink of a spoon in a coffee mug. Even the air felt still, like nobody had moved through it in hours. I set my suitcase down by the door, the thud echoing in the silence. The living room was dark, the couch empty, no throw blanket tossed over the arm like usual. The lamp in the corner, the one Lauren used when she stayed up late reading, was off. I flicked the switch by the door, and the overhead light buzzed to life, casting shadows across the hardwood. "Lauren," I called, my voice sounding louder than I meant. Nothing. Not a creak, not a shuffle. My stomach twisted, a little knot of unease tightening. I told myself she was probably upstairs, maybe taking a nap or lost in a book with her headphones on. She did that sometimes, got so into her stories she'd tune out the world. I kicked off my shoes, left them by the stairs, and started climbing. The steps groaned under my weight, each one louder in the quiet house. The hallway was dark too, no light spilling from our bedroom. I gripped the banister, my hands slick, and kept going, the knot in my gut growing heavier with every step. The hallway was dark, the hardwood cool under my socks as I padded toward our bedroom. The door was half open, a sliver of moonlight cutting through the gap, and I figured Lauren was probably dozing, maybe with her book splayed across her chest like usual. I pushed the door gently, the hinges creaking soft as a whisper, expecting to see her curled up under the quilt her mom made us for our wedding. What I saw hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Lauren was in our bed, her blonde hair fanned out on the pillow, but she wasn't alone. There was a man next to her, some guy I'd never laid eyes on in my life. He was shirtless, his arms slung across the sheets like he belonged there, like he owned the damn place. Lauren's arm was draped over his chest, her fingers resting easy against his skin. She was breathing soft, a faint snore catching in her throat, peaceful as a Sunday morning. The moonlight spilled through the window, catching the edge of her face, and she looked so calm, so content. Like I didn't exist. Like I'd never existed at all. I stood there, frozen, my hands still on the doorknob, the brass cold under my palm. The room smelled faintly of her lavender lotion, mixed with something unfamiliar, cologne, maybe, sharp and musky. The bed was a mess, the quilt bunched at their feet, the sheets twisted like they'd been there a while. His clothes were in a pile on the floor, jeans and a black t-shirt, a pair of boots kicked off by the dresser. My dresser, the one I'd refinished last summer, sanding it down in the garage while Lauren brought me iced tea. Her sweater, the gray one she wore all the time, was tossed over the chair in the corner, right next to a leather jacket I didn't recognize. My breath caught, shallow and ragged, but I didn't move. I couldn't. It was like my brain short-circuited, trying to make sense of the scene. This was our room, our life. The photos on the wall, us at the Grand Canyon, grinning at her sister's wedding, fishing at Lake Erie, stared back at me, mocking. The guy shifted a little, his head turning on the pillow, and I got a better look at him. Dark hair, a jawline like he spent time at the gym, maybe mid-30s. Nobody I knew, not a neighbor, not a coworker, not some friend she'd mentioned. A stranger. In my house. In my bed. With my wife. Lauren stirred, her snore hitching, but she didn't wake. Her arm stayed on him, her fingers twitching slightly, like she was dreaming something sweet. I wanted to yell, to storm in and demand what the hell was going on, but my voice was gone, stuck somewhere deep in my throat. My suitcase was still downstairs, my tie stuffed inside, the one she said made me look sharp. I'd come home to tell her we were set, that the lean years were over, that we could finally live a little. Instead, I was standing here, watching everything I'd built, everything I thought we'd built, crumble like a house of cards. The moonlight shifted, a cloud passing outside, and the room dimmed. I took a step back, my sock catching on a loose nail in the floorboard. The creak was faint, but it felt deafening in the silence. They didn't stir. I let go of the doorknob, my hand trembling, and backed into the hallway. My chest was tight, like I couldn't get enough air, and that knot in my gut had turned into a fist, twisting harder. I didn't know what to do, where to go, but I knew I couldn't stay there, staring at the life I thought I had. My suitcase was still downstairs, right where I'd left it, and I grabbed the handle, the leather slick from my sweaty palm. I started down the stairs, each step heavier than the last, like my boots were filled with lead. The house was still too quiet, the air thick with that lavender scent of hers mixed with his cologne, a smell that turned my stomach. I closed the front door behind me, soft as a whisper, like I didn't want to disturb the scene upstairs. That click of the lock? That was the sound of something snapping clean inside me, like a branch breaking under too much weight. The stairs creaked under my feet, each grown louder in the silence than it had any right to be. The banister was smooth, worn from years of my hand sliding down it, but tonight it felt foreign, like I was a guest in my own house. The living room was just as I'd left it, dark except for the faint glow from the streetlight sneaking through the blinds. My shoes were by the door, scuffed loafers I'd worn on the plane, thinking I'd be kicking them off to hug Lauren. The coat rack stood empty, no sign of her scarf or my old denim jacket. The coffee table held a single mug, hers, with a faint coffee ring on the wood, proof she'd been here, living her life, while I was in Chicago sealing our future. Outside, the July air hit me, warm and sticky, the kind of night where crickets hum but you barely notice. The porch light was still off, and the rose bushes by the mailbox looked wilted, like they hadn't been watered in days. I stood on the porch, suitcase in hand, and glanced back at the house. The bedroom window glowed faintly, that moonlight still spilling over the scene I couldn't unsee. I thought about the quilt on the bed, the one her mom made, now tangled around them. I thought about the photos on the wall, us laughing at Lake Erie, her in that sundress at her sister's wedding. My chest tightened, but no tears came, just that hollow numbness spreading like a stain. I'd come home to tell her we'd made it, that the lean years were over, that we could finally live. Now, I didn't even know who we was anymore. I started walking down the path, gravel crunching under my feet, the sound sharp in the quiet neighborhood. The street was empty, just rows of houses with glowing windows, families inside probably eating dinner or watching TV. Our house, though, felt like a shell, like something I'd dreamed up and woken from. I gripped the suitcase handle tighter, my knuckles white, and kept moving. I didn't know where I was going. Not back to the airport, not to a friend's place, not anywhere I could name. My phone was in my pocket, but I didn't pull it out. Who would I call? Lauren was my person, the one I'd always turn to, through late bills and long nights. Now she was upstairs, with him, and I was out here alone. The streetlight flickered as I passed under it, my shadow stretching long and thin across the pavement. I stopped for a second, looking at the suitcase, its wheels scuffed from the airport. Everything I'd brought to Chicago, thinking I was coming back a hero. I wanted to drop it, leave it right there on the sidewalk, but I kept walking. Each step felt like sinking deeper into quicksand, the weight of what I'd seen pulling me down. I just kept going, the click of that door still echoing in my head, the sound of my life breaking in two. I ended up at a cheap motel across town, the kind with neon signs and vending machines that eat your quarters. The clerk barely looked up as I paid for a room. Cash, no questions. I dropped my bag on the lumpy mattress, the room smelling of stale cigarettes and bleach, and just sat there, staring at the peeling wallpaper. My heart was still numb, but my head was starting to clear, and I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let this break me. The next morning, I called Lauren from a gas station payphone. My cell battery low and my nerves too raw to use it. I told her I had to stay in Chicago another week, said the deal needed more negotiating. My voice was steady, like I was reading a script, and she bought it, her tone light, like nothing had changed. Okay, hon, just let me know when you're back, she said, and I could hear the clink of a spoon in her coffee mug, probably the same one left on our table. I hung up, my jaw tight, and got to work. She could carry on with her secret, thinking I was clueless, but I was done being the fool. I found a PI in the yellow pages. Yeah, they still exist. Some guy named Ray with an office above a pawn shop. His place was cluttered, papers stacked on a desk older than me, a fan humming in the corner. I told him everything. The deal, coming home early, what I saw. Didn't need to say much more. He got the picture. I'll tail her, get you what you need, he said, scribbling notes. Photos, video, the works. I handed him a wad of cash, part of the advance from the deal, and he didn't flinch. Said he'd have something in a few days. I nodded, shook his hand, and walked out, the bell above his door jangling as it closed. Next, I called my bank from the motel, sitting on the edge of the bed with its scratchy comforter. The clerk on the line was polite, probably sensing my clipped tone. I shut down our joint checking and savings accounts, moving my share to a new one Lauren couldn't touch. Years of sales taught me to read fine print, so I knew what was ours and what was mine. The house was in my name. We bought it with my income when hers was spotty, so I called a lawyer I'd met at a Chamber of Commerce thing, a guy named Ed with a no-nonsense vibe. His office was downtown, all glass and leather chairs, and he listened as I laid it out, my voice flat but steady. I want divorce papers ready, I said. She gets nothing. Ed didn't blink, just nodded and started typing. By the end of the day, he had a draft, clean and airtight, protecting the $4 million and everything else I'd worked for. That week, I stayed in the motel, living off vending machine snacks and bad coffee, tying up every loose end. I called my boss, told him I needed a few days to wrap up the deal, which wasn't a total lie. I checked our credit cards, froze the ones Lauren used, and paid off what was mine. I even called the utility companies, making sure the house stayed in my name. Every move was calm, deliberate, like I was building a case, brick by brick. Ray sent updates, texts from a burner phone, grainy shots of Lauren at a cafe with the guy, his arm around her like they were some happy couple. It stung, but I didn't let it show. I saved every photo, every text, in a folder on my laptop, the one I kept locked in the motel safe. By the 7th day, I was ready. The papers were signed, the accounts secure, the evidence stacked. I sat in that dingy room, the neon sign buzzing outside, and felt something shift. Not anger, not yet, just focus. Lauren thought she could play her game and walk away clean. She didn't know I was rewriting the rules. Now, it was time to face her. I pulled up in a cab, the late afternoon sun glinting off the red brick of our house, the rose bushes by the mailbox still drooping. My key turned in the lock, and I stepped inside, the air cooler than I remembered, smelling faintly of lemon cleaner and her lavender lotion. The envelope in my hand, thick with legal papers and Ray's photos, felt heavier than my suitcase. Lauren was in the kitchen, humming some tune, stirring something on the stove. She looked up when I walked in, her blonde hair tied back in that messy bun I used to love, wearing her gray sweater with the frayed cuffs. Her blue eyes lit up, and she smiled, a real smile, like she thought I was back for good. "Jack, you're home early," she said, wiping her hands on a dish towel, the one with little sunflowers we'd bought at a flea market. I didn't smile back. I set my suitcase by the door, right next to my scuffed loafers, and walked to the counter. Without a word, I slid the envelope across it, the manila paper scraping against the granite. Her smile faltered, her brow creasing as she picked it up, her fingers brushing the clasp. She opened it, pulling out the divorce papers first. Her eyes scanned the top sheet, and her face changed, like a curtain dropping after the final act. Then she saw the photos, grainy shots from Ray, showing her with that guy at a cafe, his arm around her, another of them walking into our house, his hand on her back. Her breath hitched, and she dropped the envelope, papers scattering across the counter. "Jack, what is this?" she stammered, her voice high, shaky. I leaned against the fridge, arms crossed, and looked her dead in the eye. "The deal closed, Lauren. For $1 million. Done. And I came home early last week to tell you. Guess what I found instead?" Her face crumpled, eyes going wide, then filling with tears. She started shaking, her hands gripping the counter like it was the only thing holding her up. "Jack, please, I can explain," she said, her voice breaking. She stepped toward me, reaching out, but I held up a hand, stopping her cold. "Don't," I said, my voice flat, like I was reading a grocery list. "You've got 2 hours to pack and get out." She froze, mouth open, tears streaming now, smearing her mascara. "You don't mean that," she whispered, but I didn't budge. I felt like a statue, carved from the numb that had settled in my chest since I saw her with him. She tried to argue, her words tumbling out in a rush. "It was a mistake, Jack, I swear. I was lonely. You were gone so much. I didn't mean for it to happen." Her hands were shaking, reaching for me again, but I stepped back, out of reach. The kitchen clock ticked, loud in the silence, its hands pointing to 5:32 p.m. I glanced at it, then back at her. 1 hour, 58 minutes, I said, my tone ice cold. She sobbed, a raw, choking sound, and sank to the floor, her sweater bunching around her. Please, Jack, we can fix this. Think about everything we've been through. I didn't flinch, didn't soften. I thought about the lean years, the ramen dinners, the way she'd bring me coffee when I worked late. I thought about that quilt on our bed, now tainted by some stranger's boots. You thought I wouldn't find out, I said. You were wrong. I turned and walked to the living room, sitting on the couch, the one we'd picked out together at IKEA. She stayed in the kitchen, crying, muttering to herself, but I didn't look back. The photos, the papers, the deal, they were all in my favor now. I'd made sure of it. 2 hours, I told myself, and this chapter would be over. After Lauren was gone, the house felt like a museum, all quiet and empty, every corner holding ghosts of what used to be. I sat at the counter, the same one where her coffee mug still sat, cold and half full, and opened my laptop. Ray, the PI, had sent me his final report. Photos, videos, timestamps of Lauren with that guy at cafes, parks, our own front porch. I zipped it all up, no note, no explanation, and emailed it to her parents. Just the truth, raw and unfiltered. I hit send, the whoosh sound echoing in the silent house, and leaned back, staring at the sunflower dish towel she'd left behind. The divorce went through clean and quick, like a well-aimed dart hitting the bullseye. I met my lawyer, Ed, at his downtown office, all polished glass and chrome, the kind of place that smells like money. He slid the final papers across his desk, the ink still fresh, and said, "She didn't fight it, Jack. You're clear." Lauren walked away with nothing, no house, no car, no claim to the business I'd built through years of cold calls and late nights. The judge didn't blink. The evidence was ironclad, and I'd locked down our accounts before she could try anything. She thought she had options, maybe thought she could sweet-talk her way out or lean on that guy she'd picked over me. She didn't know I'd spent that week in the motel planning every move, tying up every loose end like a guy wiring a house before a storm. I stayed in the house, though it didn't feel like home anymore. The living room couch was still there, the one we'd argued over at IKEA, but I couldn't sit on it without seeing her face, crumpled and tear-streaked. The quilt her mom made was gone. She'd taken it, probably, but the photos on the fridge stayed. Us at Lake Erie, her in that sundress at her sister's wedding. I didn't take them down. They were proof I'd lived a life before this. The rose bushes by the mailbox were dead now, brittle from neglect, and I didn't bother watering them. I went to work, closed the deal, shook hands with the suits from Chicago over video calls. The $4 million was mine, safe in accounts she'd never touch, but it didn't feel like a win. It felt like armor, something to keep me standing. Lauren's parents never called after I sent the report. I didn't expect them to. Her dad, a retired mechanic with a handshake like a vice, had always liked me, but blood's thicker than promises. I pictured her mom opening the email, her face going pale, maybe crying like Lauren had. Didn't matter. They needed to know who their daughter was, what she'd done to the life we'd built through lean years of ramen dinners and late bills. I didn't send it out of spite. I sent it because lies don't belong in a family. Not theirs, not mine. Ray's footage was clear, her laughing with that guy, his arm around her, walking into our house like it was theirs. No one could argue with that. I changed the locks the day after she left, the locksmith's drill whining as I stood on the porch, sipping coffee from a gas station cup. I sold her car, a silver Honda she'd loved, to a guy down the street for cash. The business, my software sales, kept humming, my name on every contract, untouchable. Lauren had thought she could slip away, start fresh with someone else while I was on the road. She didn't realize I'd played my final card, the one I'd held close that whole week in the motel, staring at peeling wallpaper. I played it perfectly, every move calculated, every base covered. Now, I stood in the kitchen, the clock ticking to 6:03 p.m. The house too big for one guy. The deal was done, the divorce final, Lauren gone. But the silence? That was louder than any win. I thought I'd won. I was wrong. A week after she cleared out, my phone buzzed while I was in the kitchen, the same one where I'd handed her the divorce envelope. It was a text from a number I didn't know, a burner probably. Wire $500,000 to this account by Friday, or I send the photos to your investors. Attached was a grainy shot from the night I closed the deal in Chicago at a bar, me with my arm around some woman I barely remembered, her red dress tight, my grin too loose. Another image loaded, a bank transfer, $1 million from the deal to an account in my name, dated the day I flew home. I never made that transfer. Then came a voice message, Lauren's voice, sharp and cold. You thought you could erase me, Jack? I've got more. Pay, or I torch your reputation. My stomach dropped. She'd been collecting dirt while I was on the road, and my PI, Ray, missed it all. I stumbled to my office, a small room off the living room with a desk and a creaky chair. The whiskey bottle on the shelf stayed untouched, the glass empty. I sat in the dark, the laptop's glow harsh on my face, and replayed the message. Her voice was calm, like she was ordering coffee, not holding a grenade to my life. Rage bubbled, but panic crept in faster, a cold sweat on my neck. She didn't want the money. She wanted to own me, to twist the knife after I'd thought I'd won. I stared at the photo, the bar's neon lights blurry in the background. I remembered that night, too many celebratory drinks, a woman who laughed at my dumb jokes. Nothing happened, or so I thought, but the picture said otherwise. The bank transfer was worse, a forgery so clean it could fool anyone. My investors, guys like Whitaker with their cufflinks and contracts, wouldn't care about the truth. They'd see fraud, scandal, and pull out. I leaned back, the chair groaning, and thought about the house, the deal, the years with Lauren, ramen dinners, her coffee mugs, that quilt her mom made. Had she been playing me that whole time, waiting for me to trip? I didn't wire the money. Instead, I grabbed my phone and called Ed, my lawyer, his number burned into my memory from the divorce. Ed, we got a problem, I said, voice low, like someone might overhear in my own empty house. I told him about the text, the photos, the transfer. He didn't sugarcoat it. She's got leverage, Jack. We need to trace that account, find out who's behind it. I hung up and opened my laptop, digging through emails, bank records, anything that might show how she pulled this off. The clock on the wall ticked past 7 p.m. The house silent except for a faint hum from the fridge. Lauren thought she'd back me into a corner, but I wasn't done. If she wanted a war, I'd fight dirty too, digging for proof she'd staged it all. The $4 million, my name, my life, I wasn't letting her take it without a fight. Drop your theories in the comments. Jack's methodical planning feels cold and calculated. Do you see this as strength or a defense mechanism? And if you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.